Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Eric Czerlonka, the visionary founder and CEO of Czerlonka Event Design and Management, a global leader in luxury incentive travel. With a foundation built in the luxury hospitality industry, Eric's journey began at Chicago's iconic Navy Pier, where he excelled as head of catering. He later honed his craft during an impressive tenure with the Ritz-Carlton Hotels, orchestrating unforgettable events in Boston and Los Angeles. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Happy to be here.
Awesome. It is my pleasure to have you. And for our listeners, Eric has an incredible bio and background listed in our show notes. But Eric, why don't you dive in by just
Thank
telling
you.
with our listeners more about yourself and what you do?
I'd be happy to. Yeah. As you said, my career started many years ago at this point, which is kind of shocking to think about how long it's been, but it's probably been about 30 years since it started in Chicago. I've really fond memories there. It was a great experience. Since that time, as you said, I have worked with the Ritz-Carlton Hotels for many years, both in Boston here. I was one of the first area directors over two Ritz-Carlton properties in the catering and events role, which was really unique and sort of interesting for me to do that as one of the first people to do it within that brand. And then they had sent me, or I was asked to go to LA, where I was with Ritz-Carlton as well, and continued there. And being a Bostonian born and raised and living in this area, to all of a sudden find myself in LA, dealing with the whole world of Hollywood and everything that went along with events and entertainment there, it was just like winning the jackpot for me. All of a sudden, anything was possible in life, and there I was in Hollywood. And then I had an opportunity to go out to Hawaii for a little bit, so I've moved around quite a bit over the years. And then I started my business in 2011, and I decided to come back to Boston to do that. And so I have been here now since 2011, full time, traveling all over the world and working on events and corporate events, incentive travel, and those sorts of things.
That's amazing. And so, having such a tenured career and impressive career, what was that moment that made you realize that you wanted to go off and do your own thing?
I'll try to keep this story short, but it was really instrumental, and it ties into what I was just saying about being out in LA. I had the opportunity very quickly when being in LA to work on what they call a press junket. And, when they promote the movies that are coming out to the press so that they can get coverage prior to opening day. And we were working with Ridley Scott on a movie that was coming out called Kingdom of Heaven. And he is an Oscar winner. And he worked with this gentleman, Arthur Max, who was a designer, and he was a scout for locations and that sort of thing. And so I was thrown into this experience of working with Arthur Max on this press junket. And I couldn't believe how open-minded they were to just anything being possible. And we were here in a hotel, and as you can imagine, with guests and everything. And he was talking about coming in 4 days, and they were going to transform this entire space. And he wanted, live animals running around and chickens and goats and all these different things. And then he said, Eric, we're going to end with fireworks. And so my initial response was, Arthur, I don't know if I can get a permit for fireworks in 3 days. And he looked at me and he said, Eric, this is Hollywood. Anything is possible. And I thought, and all of a sudden it just rang through me. Like, it was like an electric shock or something. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in like the land of possibilities where anything is possible. And I've lived my life with that idea ever since. It just was what an amazing experience. I am so grateful for that experience because it did just change everything for me.
That's such a fun story, and you're so right. I mean, just being in this land that makes you realize like really anything is possible. And so
Yeah.
as you were going through that moment, like did you always have it in the back of your mind that you wanted to own a business one day and that was just kind of like, okay, this is my sign that I need to do it?
Yeah, I did. And I didn't start the business for some time after that. I really took every opportunity I could to learn
Mhm.
from everyone possible. I like to think of myself as a sponge. I had this opportunity to be around the most talented people and just take in everything I possibly could from them. And I was really positioned very well being associated with Ritz-Carlton at the time and having the opportunities and doors open to be in events like the Golden Globes and network events and things like that, where really they are they're driving trends, they're doing everything. I mean, imagine the experiences that people in the room have, and you're always trying to one up that last experience for them. And having an opportunity to be in there myself was something that was really special. Um, I did always know that I wanted to have my own business. I knew that every person I came into contact with during my time at Ritz-Carlton, and within the hospitality industry was a potential future client, possibly. And I treated everybody like that. And I just went through my entire career always knowing that relationships were going to be very important when I was ready to do this. And then it was 2011 when I was living in Hawaii, and I was thinking, what do I want to do next? I didn't want to be a hotel GM. I knew I wanted to do something really creative. And I just thought, how am I going to get from Hawaii back onto the mainland, and where do I want to be? And it was Boston. I'd already worked in the Boston Harbor Hotel. I'd worked in both Ritz-Carltons. I'd worked in Mandarin Oriental. So there were no other Boston hotels that I really at the time wanted to go into. And I thought, this is a sign that it's time to do it. And so I started it. And August 4th, 2011, I came back to Boston. That was it.
I love that. And what you said rings true, where basically, I mean, you had already been in a handful of hotels in Boston, and it
Yeah.
almost sounds like maybe your opportunities were limited compared to when you start your own company, the possibilities are endless, which goes back to your
Yes.
Hollywood story about like
Yeah.
there's no such thing as not being able to do something. Everything's possible.
It's so true. It's really, it's so interesting. I know it sounds like a cliche. I'm fully aware of that, right? That anything is possible in life and everything, but it really does play a role even today in everything that I do. When I'm traveling the world and looking at destinations and locations for events, or just, what is an experience going to be that these guests who are coming here may not get on their own? How can I
Mhm.
open a door to something? What access can I get to for them? Um, it really is with this mindset that anything is possible. So they might tell you when you first ask the question, right? I always say to people, I say, I'm going to ask a question and you can tell me no, but I'm going to ask it again and probably one more time after that. I'm not going to just settle with no right away, because there are ways to work around everything that we want to accomplish and everything we want to do. We just have to talk to the right people and find the right, get somebody who understands what we're trying to accomplish and partner with them. So yeah, I think about that every day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so with that being said, I'd love if you could give an overview of your company, what it is that you offer, and
Sure.
the types of people that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, primarily what we do is we curate incentive travel for a lot of insurance companies, financial companies, but different corporations. We have clients that are also in technology, biotechnology. Um, and they incentivize sometimes the people who are selling their products or employees internally. And we are the ones that they'll come to say, we want to create a really memorable experience that is going to motivate them throughout the course of the year. So they're working towards something. And essentially, in the end, right, that incentive trip is a reward for a job well done, and meeting goals or succeeding goals. Um, so that's what we do, and we take it and we run with it. So I travel the world just looking for destinations and ideas. I have a whole library of places in the back of my mind, just waiting for the right client or the right opportunity to pull it out and say, have you ever considered this destination? Here's what I know about it. Here's why I think it would work for your group. So we do everything like that. In addition, we do corporate events, we do conferences, we do anything associated with that type of entertainment and events. So, but primarily incentive is where we are really thriving and where we're getting the most recognition for.
Right. And the fact that you specialize in the incentive trips, I think is something that's really cool and really unique, because I feel like when I hear of luxury planning companies, it's typically like for corporate or even like high net worth individuals who are looking to book it for themselves, their partner, their family, whatever it
Yeah,
might be. So I think that incentive piece is really cool and really unique. And I'm curious to hear what made you want to hone in on that. Like, was there an
yeah,
experience you had that made you want to choose incentive travel planning?
yes. So when I first started my business, you start a business and you're open to do anything, right? I was
Hmm.
doing weddings in Boston. I was doing just one-off events, hotel openings. I was doing anything. You just want people to know that you're out there and you're grateful for any type of business, right?
Hmm.
So I was doing that, and one of the things that I found myself doing was I was attaching myself to meeting planners, and that ties back to people I knew from the hotel industry who were doing similar things, but they knew that I had a knack for the creative and unusual. And so they would bring me on to focus solely on evening events. So if you're on a 4-day incentive, chances are each night there's going to be something that is a wow, right? And each night is going to be completely different for the next. And I would be the person to come up with the concepts and, figure out the timelines and the decor and entertainment piece and all of that kind of stuff. And I was just sitting back and I would observe again, like a sponge, just kind of taking it all in. And, I think anybody who starts a business has a moment where they think, I'm pretty sure I could do this better. I think I could do this better. I think I could operate this in a different way. I think I could approach it in a different way. And I think I could stand out. And it was a series of doing those things. So I was sort of introduced to it with one very specific responsibility, but I knew over time that I could do it all and just start from scratch to from start to finish,
Yeah.
and because you're talking about a lot of things logistically that weren't my passion. My passion wasn't to build registration websites and apps and that sort of thing, but it's all stuff that I learned how to do in the beginning, and I was doing it all myself. And now we have people specifically who that is their passion, right? We have a director of technology who his passion is to create these websites that are highlighting the destinations and people are registering through them. And then he's turning that into an app, which is how they're managing their schedules and their activities, and we're communicating with them while they're there. So it's evolved quite a bit from the beginning.
And it's really interesting to hear just how things have changed over time. I mean, like you said,
Mm,
you just took up any project that came your way, but throughout time
right.
realized what you really enjoy and also what you're really good at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I get very passionate about what I do still to this day. Like, I think you can see that, I when I talk about people like Arthur Max and the Hollywood thing and all those different experiences I've had, although, we're talking almost 20 years ago when I talk about those things, which seems almost like that's not possible, but I am of an age that that's possible. But yeah, I still get really excited about it. Like I can
Yeah.
take myself right back there and just remember exactly how I felt in that moment and everything like that. And I love what I do. I was sitting next to somebody yesterday at a luncheon. It was a holiday luncheon, and somebody next to me who does something similar looked at me. They're in the hospitality industry, and she just said, "We're really lucky, aren't we?" And I said, "Yeah, we really are." She's like, "We work hard, but look at what we do." And I'm like, "I know, it's really I never would have imagined this as I was growing up or even starting my career that this is what it would turn into, but I couldn't be happier with it."
Yeah. And isn't that one of the most gratifying things about being a business owner is just looking back and being like, if only past me knew where present me would be now.
Yeah, yeah. It is really interesting, isn't it? I just the looking back piece is something that I think is really important. And in doing interviews like this, it prompts you to think back on those times. And I feel really grateful for them. There's not much I would go back and change. I had some really great mentors. I learned from a lot of really wonderful people over the years, and they're people I can still reach out to today. And um, yeah, I think when you realize what you're passionate about, what's going to make you happy to go to work every day, um, and you follow it and you kind of open up your mind and just say, really, anything is possible and I can do this. Yeah, this is where you could be. That's how it happened for me.
I love that. And it makes me, or it gives really a good segue into the next question I was thinking, which is
Yeah.
I can imagine that hospitality is probably a high burnout career with just always needing to be
Mm,
on. And so,
yeah.
like you mentioned, your evident passion probably kind of helps to prevent that because you truly enjoy what you do. But how do you prevent the burnout from happening, especially when so much
Yeah.
creativity is needed? It's such a creative field. Like, how do you prevent yourself from just feeling like you've kind of burned both ends of the candle, so to say?
Yeah. I think what I have learned over the years that it has evolved is my time when I'm not on the road. So I probably travel 50% of the time.
Mm.
The beauty with that is I'm always in different locations. So when you're traveling someplace new, there's that immediate you land and the air smells different and the temperature's different and you're like, what's ahead and what are we going to be doing here? That excitement comes quite often because a lot of the
Yeah.
places I'm going, I have never been before. So I'm experiencing it for the first time. So that is really kind of a driving factor. And I say this, and it's hard for people to understand sometimes, but then when we decide it's going to be a certain location, it is like, for example, we did a trip to the Serengeti, and we were bringing a group out there. Well, from the time it was decided that that's going to be the destination, I went 3 times in 18 months. Okay. So you're talking 30, 40 hours of travel. You're going out there. So what is a dream opportunity for a lot of people, now all of a sudden I've done 3 times in 18 months. And so by the time we're going with the group, I'm like, oh, I have to do that trip again, and I'm kind of dreading it in a sense.
Yeah.
To answer your question, then I get there, and then the guests start to arrive, and their energy I get off of that is unbelievable, right?
I can
Because
imagine.
now you have 140 people coming in and going, Eric, I can't believe that we're in the middle of the Serengeti, and I can't believe this is where we are, and I can't believe that we're going to safari every day, and we're going to take hot air balloons, and we're going to go to, you know, all these different things. And their energy and their excitement, there's no way that you could be in this industry and not feed off of that.
Mhm.
So it kind of ebbs and flows, right? It's work, it's 3 trips. By the third trip to Africa, you're getting a little tired and you're kind of like, all right, I got to go because I got to go and I got to do this. And then when you actually go with the group on the fourth time, you're just so energized that it's adrenaline in a sense. It's really, really interesting.
It's almost like it's that moment you're like, this is what makes it all worth it. Like just seeing
Yes,
the
yes,
expressions and people's excitement. It's just
yes,
like everything came together for this moment.
yeah. And you know what? And when I'm not traveling, I am very I'm quiet. I don't know. I'm at my home. As I told you, I'm at my home right now, but my home is very secluded. It's surrounded by conservation trees and everything, and I'm just by myself. But it's my sanctuary. And
Yeah.
so, you know, to your point, in a hospitality industry, we know how to talk a lot. Like I can talk and I can mingle and I can do what I have to do. And you're also talking, people are talking at you. I use that term quite a bit. When I go to a
Mm.
destination and I could spend 4 full days, almost 12 hours a day with somebody who wants to sell me on this destination, they're they're talking at me a lot of that time, right? And you're trying to absorb everything. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Um, and then I get home and I see my dogs and my house is quiet, and it really does. It gives me what I need to be able to get up and get excited about the next trip.
Yeah. So I think that's really great is having, like you said, not that balance, but really the ebbs and flows. So kind of being able to meet them where they are and get what you need,
Yeah,
as you said.
yeah, absolutely. One of the best compliments I think I can get. We did a program in the Atacama Desert in Chile, and you land, and actually the landscape there are a lot of references to the moon because of the landscape. It's the red desert. It's really unusual. Everywhere you look is just kind of unusual, like you haven't seen it before. And it's about an hour, it was about an hour trip from the airport to the resort that we were using. And I was standing at the door, and the beauty of this industry as well is we see the same people every year. So the majority of people are repeats, about 85 to 90% a year are repeats. So we get to know them. We know who their kids are. We're like, how have you been for the last year? You're excited to see them. But the best compliment I get is when they walk through the door and they're like, Eric, how did you find this place? Like, where are we? I'm like, I'm like, is that good or bad? And they're like, no, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm like, oh, okay, good, good, good. And I'm like, but
Yeah, you're like, this could one of either
it won
way.
either way, but it's like it's one of the best compliments ever because they're like, we never would have found this or done this on our own. And that is really what makes it worth it for me.
Yeah. So you've chatted about a few trips now. You've chatted about Chile just now and also the Africa
Mm,
trip. But what would you say
yeah.
are some of like your most favorite things that you've planned for clients or worked on?
Yeah. It's funny. That's a really hard question for me because
There's probably too many.
you know what it is, and they're each kind of special in their own way.
That's
And a lot
true.
of times I'm experiencing them as well. I think ones that were sort of life changing in a sense, if you want to be that dramatic about it, is I had the opportunity to go to Rwanda and trek gorillas and actually go into a gorilla's nest
Wow.
and experience what that was like to be, we trekked probably 2.5 hours out into a jungle, and all of a sudden I found myself in a gorilla's nest, meaning we had a silverback who was the male, we had the females, we had the babies, like it was probably 12 gorilla, like a family. And just standing in the middle of that. Um, and the weirdest thing about that I took away from it was there was no fear associated with it. I don't even
Mm.
know. It was the strangest thing. It was very peaceful. It was calm. You're with guides. You are protected in a sense, right? They respect those gorillas so much. I can't tell you. Like I actually went, that was one of my first trips after COVID, during COVID. So I had to travel with a mask. I had to get checked for COVID every 24 hours while I was in Rwanda. And they let me trek without the mask. But when I got to the gorillas, I had to wear a mask so that I wouldn't give the gorillas COVID. And I thought that was so interesting, but they're very protective of the gorillas. They take very good care of them. But that was really memorable and very special.
Yeah, that's really cool. And when a
Yeah.
company comes to you or any type of organization and they're like, we want to plan some type of incentive travel, what are some
Yes.
things that you recommend they think about or questions that you may ask them in order to kind of help them plan the perfect thing?
Yeah. I find that it has a lot to do with, so we deal directly typically with CEOs,
Hmm.
and it does have a lot to do with their level of travel, their experiences with travel, and their likes. Um, so, for example, we have some that are more conservative in a sense that they like to stay domestic in the U.S., which is great. We're happy to do it. So we're in Utah and Montana and California and all these great places. And then we have others that are really adventurous. So there are some that'll just say, we want a beautiful luxury experience that is just going to leave them wowed, and we can do that. There are others who say, we want to take them somewhere they would never consider going on their own, and we're willing to go 30 plus hours to do it. Anywhere in the world is an option. And so I really have to listen to them and understand how they want to represent their company, what their goals are. Um, with this incentive industry, it's really interesting. There are certain industries, so insurance, finance, automobiles, um, technology I mentioned, that really use incentive travel to incentivize people and grow revenue within their companies. And it really does have a big impact on that. And I remember standing in the back of the room once with a CEO, really wonderful gentleman. And I looked at him and I just said, I said, and this is when I was first starting, but I said, how important is the destination? Wait, because we were getting ready to announce the next year. And he said, Eric, it's everything. He's like, if we were to pick a bad destination or a destination that just didn't intrigue them, or if if we didn't invest the time with them while they're here, right? So relationships again are really strong. He said it could have a really negative financial impact on our company for next year. He's like,
Mm.
we have all the records, we track this, we know. So it's really that important. So I have to really understand exactly what their goals are. I mean, that's a really big part of it and what they're willing to do. There are some that are like, we don't want to ask them to go too far. So, 8 or 9 hours of travel, maybe one layover is okay. But when you're talking Africa, that could have been two layovers, a private plane, all these different things. So it just depends on the comfort level of the client.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point too about how destination really is everything. I mean, you mentioned the whole point about growing revenue, but I can imagine it also helps with employee retention or being
Yes.
able to
Yeah.
increase the productivity, which probably goes along
Yes.
with that. But it's just so interesting to think about all the benefits that come out of something like this.
Yeah, it really is amazing. We have a couple of Boston-based companies where they are incentivizing employees internally, and we'll take about 100 of them out. And it's funny because the conversations are a bit different depending on how well the company did will determine what they're willing to do for the incentive, right? So if there's a year that wasn't so great, all of a sudden maybe they're not at a 5-star property, maybe it's a 4-star and they're still having a great time and everything, but it's not what it was the year prior. And the people experience that. And then they're like, hey, we really liked that luxury experience where we didn't have to worry about anything. This one's a little different, so let's work a little harder next year. But yeah, it's really fascinating to see the results that come from these things. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are some trends that you think might be coming up within like incentive travel and being able to work with different companies in 2025 as we prepare for next year?
Yeah, I think 2025, it's interesting. I think we're starting to go. Um, more international again. So I would say going into 2020, we personally were doing less in Europe, less international travel. And then, of course, the pandemic really did change things quite a bit. I will say that changed things in two ways. One, we came out of the pandemic much stronger as a company, like my
Mhm.
own company. We found that people realized that it wasn't about the size of the group. So, say, for example, in 2019, our average group was 250 to 300 attendees. All of a sudden, coming out of the pandemic, clients were saying, we don't want more than 200 or 150. We want it to be an experience where we are able to speak to everybody, spend time with everybody. We want to build relationships over those 5 days, and we're going to, in some cases, increase the budget, lower the number of attendees, which is amazing, right? You've just totally changed the whole experience for everybody. Um, we saw a lot of that. And so, but it was domestic primarily. And now we're going very international again. So going into 2025, we're looking at London, we're looking at Iceland, we're looking at all these different locations. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I think the trends in an industry like this are really dependent on, again, the desires of the CEOs and the company's message at that time.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll have their own internal things that go on, and they might say, hey, because XYZ happened this year, we need to go a little more conservative in what we're doing because we don't want to send the wrong message. There's a lot of internal
Right.
messaging that happens there to the people who they support or sell their products. So I'm not sure if that answered your question
No, it
completely,
does.
but
It makes
yeah, I
sense.
mean, for us personally, what we're seeing is more international, more let's get out there, let's go do something. The more unusual, the better. And also taking things over the top. And again, that could be just the market that we found ourselves associated with and the clients we have, but it is what is a good example? I was just in London, and if we're going to do the typical things that someone would do in London, we need to do it privately, right? So we're not going to ever put people in a, as they would say in London, in a queue to wait to like get on to see the crown jewels or something like that. We're going to buy out the crown jewels and do it privately in some way, right? So it's about taking those experiences and really elevating them. If they can leave and say, we never could have done that on our own, that's a win.
Yeah, I love that. And you brought up a good point about working directly with the CEOs to curate an event that's tasteful because you mentioned like if something might be happening that they might know of, and they
Yeah,
don't want to send the wrong message. I mean, it makes me think of, unfortunately, if a CEO might know that layoffs could potentially be coming in the year and you don't
exactly.
want to
Yes,
go
exactly.
crazy with this trip and then send the wrong message internally. So I think it's
Yes.
really great that you're so integrated with that and in tune with what they want to make sure that they're demonstrating and showcasing.
Yeah, they actually they're so forthcoming with information. And as I said before, with the guests, we see the same guests every year. And you have to imagine when you have a few successful years under your belt with a company like this, the trust is strong, right? I
Mhm.
trust them, they trust me. Um, I have to listen to what they're saying. I have to understand their business, exactly to your point. Where's it going? What's happening there? Um, and um, they're very involved in the decision, meaning if this is recent, I would say to a client, one of these clients who will just say, we'll go anywhere in the world, Eric, just tell us where we should consider. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's okay. That's a pretty big space, right? Um, but I might reference 15, I might start looking into 15 different destinations all over the world.
Mhm.
And so the way I would start a presentation to discuss, like, say, 2026 or 2027 would be, here are 15 places around the world that I considered. I think there are four that you're going to be really, really interested in, right? So I'll show them the list and I'll say, I can speak to any one of these, but I'm going to highlight four that I think are right, knowing you. And I would do the four, and then they'll narrow it down to two. And then I go there and I start doing the real like legwork. So they're very involved in that sense. I travel with a videographer who captures my experience while I'm out there doing things. So as I'm doing activities or I'm experiencing, I was just in Sicily or I'm in Marrakesh, I'm able to come back and say, hey, here's a highlight video of 4 minutes of what I did in 4 days that your guest could do. And yeah, they're really, at the end of the day, they make the call. They
Yeah.
decide where they want to go.
Yeah. So exciting to think about. What would you say in addition to like the gratification you get from your guests? What's like your favorite part about what you do?
Hmm. I never imagined I would travel the world the way I do, that I would
Mm.
experience all these different cultures, that I am forever learning every day. And if a client comes to me and says, I want to go somewhere, it could be anything, honestly. Like I've had some really wild things thrown out my way, and I love it. Then I need to become an expert on it quickly,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's it. I think that, my days are never boring. Anybody on my team, there's 10 of us in the office, and we're all just educating ourselves every day about destinations and how things work. We understand how to do the planning, how to logistically get people booked in airline tickets and, everything that's going to go into their experience. We could probably do that blindfolded at this point. We've been doing it for a really long time. If that was all we did, maybe we would get bored, but we can't possibly get bored when we're constantly given opportunities to explore locations and cultures and different things. It's really a gift. It's amazing.
I love it. Eric, this has been a really wonderful episode, and I've really appreciated having the
Thank you.
opportunity to have you on the
Yeah,
show. And as we get
I
closer
appreciate
to
it.
the end of this episode, I'd love to ask you what your favorite local businesses are to support.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about this because I've listened to your podcast many times. When I think about business, there's a really great florist that's in Melrose called Pepperberry Florist. They have been huge supporters of ours, and we've used them quite a bit. So they're a really wonderful business, privately owned and it's kind of smaller operated, but they're really, really talented. Um, it's hard not to lean into the big hotels, but I mean, we're partners with all the different hotels locally. Um, in our neighborhood where we are, um, our offices are right on State Street. A local business is a restaurant called Zoe, and if you haven't heard of it, it's Greek food, which is amazing.
Mm.
And literally every day, starting at about 11:45, there's a line around the corner. So we now know like an early lunch is great if you want Zoe, because you can go in at 11 when they open the doors and get in there and have the most amazing chicken and Greek salad you've ever had. Um, we tend to, it's funny because we experience so many amazing things. I think Zoe is a perfect example of this, right? Because when we're traveling the world, we're doing everything's kind of big, right? Like they're big
Mhm.
dinners, big chefs, like because that's what we want to sell to our clients. And then when we're home, we're just looking for really great quality stuff
Yeah.
that feels very familiar and is almost at the end of the day, Boston is our neighborhood. We all grew up in Massachusetts, and it's nice to be home when we're home. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And where can our listeners find you online in case they'd like to connect with you further?
Yeah. So Czerlonka Event Design and Management on Instagram. Excuse me. I can also be found on LinkedIn. We post a lot of our videos and everything on LinkedIn, and we have a business page there as well. Um, and then our website is Czerlonka, Czerlonka. It's hard to say without spelling it because I'm so used to doing that my entire life. .com. And I would encourage them to go there. We have an inspiration page of videos, and it's all my traveling from the past year. Every place I've been, you can
Awesome.
look at these highlight videos, and maybe it'll inspire them to try some new locations next time they're planning a trip.
Very cool. And I will link to all those places in the show notes that our listeners can click through and connect with you from there. But thank you so much again
Great.
for coming on today's show.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate it.